It's finally here. Oh, that's weird. What? The hell? Come on. Unfortunately, that was the reality for the roughly 8 million gamers that decided to pre-order one of the most hyped up games over the past decade. Cyberpunk 2077 finally arrived in our hands after 8 long years of anticipation. After countless trailers, on-stage events, and PC-only reviews. Many players believed this would be the next defining open-world RPG. And after years of trailers, gameplay showcases, and marketing, expectations were sky high. Cyberpunk wasn't just expected to be good, it was expected to redefine what modern open world games could be. Then people played it. Or, at least they tried to. From countless stores offering refunds, as well as Sony pulling the game from their digital stores, this release was just another symptom of a disgusting trend plaguing the gaming industry today. The rushed release, the broken launch, the we will fix it later mindset. And no game better symbolizes these patterns than the PC version of Cyberpunk was rough to say the least. Countless bugs, unstable frame rates, and janky textures all were inescapable. Despite this, people still found ways to enjoy it. I mean, the core game wasn't bad under all the glitches and bugs. This, however, was not the case for those who played the game on the last generation of consoles. I mean, you would expect if you buy the game for a system that the developers specifically supported, then they would at least have tried to optimize the game for it. Yeah, no. NPCs walking through walls, textures failing to load, cars spawning out of thin air, the frame rate dropping so hard the game became a slideshow. I mean, people reported crashes every 20 minutes. As previously stated, the game was pulled from the PlayStation Store. Customers were offered full refunds, and all of this caused CD Projekt's Red stock to drop by nearly 30% in a matter of days. I mean, you would think that this disastrous launch would be a surprise to the developers, those that spent the past years of their lives dedicated to this game. However, internal reports later revealed that employees had flagged the unfinished state of the last generation build months before the launch. They knew it wasn't ready, and yet the release date, which had already been delayed 3 times, was not moving again. Why did this happen? Why would people so dedicated to this game be happy to release it unfinished? Well, the answer? Simple. The shareholders. The game's final release date was just before Christmas, the time where there is the biggest spike in game sales. The higher-ups did not want to waste this opportunity to suck up as much money from gamers as they could. So they forced the developers to release it in an unfinished, buggy, and outright horrific state. Cyberpunk was not an anomaly. This has been happening in the gaming industry for years, and it had continued to happen way after this game's release.
Five Nights at Freddy's. What started off as a small indie horror game turned into a multimedia franchise spanning 11 years, at least 10 games, a bunch of books, and 2 live-action movies. This franchise always comes back, and every time it does come back, it finds a way to become bigger. In 2017, series creator Scott Cawthon began working with Steel Wool Studios on Five Nights at Freddy's Help Wanted, an immersive VR entry that was received pretty well, all things considered. But their collaboration did not stop there, as they began working on Security Breach. Even before release, the production of the game was problematic. Originally slated for release in late 2020, it ended up getting delayed twice, thanks to the game's expanding scope and some virus you might have heard about. And guess when it did end up coming out? just in time for the holiday season. I'm noticing a pattern here. What resulted was an absolute mess of a game, riddled with unpolished gameplay, heavy performance issues, strange enemy AI, and countless bugs.
Freddy, please! Oh my god, no! Not like this! Not like this, please. Give me in, give me in! Freddy! Freddy!
There was also a ton of cut and altered content, which left the story feeling strangely incomplete.
Did they run out of budget for the last animation?
And for a franchise where fans analyze every poster, voice line, you can imagine how much of a frenzy that caused. But as much as I'd love to talk about how Security Breach affected the FNAF storyline, I don't want this video to run over an hour, so let's just save that for another time.
No Man's Sky was another instance of a game releasing in a buggy mess. Made by Hello Games, No Man's Sky promised many things. They promised procedural generation, 18 quintillion planets spread across a ridiculous world, sand planets, walking sentinels, landing on asteroids, finding other players in the wild, griefing, and many, many things more. As we know now, almost all of the promised features were not met on release, and players were not happy. Furthermore, the bugs were so terrible that the game became unplayable. The game's camera didn't work, textures broke constantly. These might have been forgiven if the game was actually playable. Even top-of-the-line hardware back in that time was stuttering, and you could forget about alt-tabbing unless you feel like reopening the game. Also, did I forget to mention they promised multiplayer in the trailers and interviews, and then just didn't have it? Anyway, that's enough ranting. So, what happened? Well, as I'm sure you understand by now, it was a rush deadline. One thing that is unique to No Man's Sky, however, is that the head of Hello Games well and truly oversold it. He made promise after promise that was just not possible for a 6-person team. Oh, did I mention that No Man's Sky was made by a 6-person team? No Man's Sky eventually became one of gaming's greatest redemption stories. Through years of free updates, Hello Games slowly delivered many of the features that had originally hoped for. The game we have today is almost unrecognizable from the one released in 2016, but that redemption came at a cost. Years of work were spent rebuilding trust that could have been preserved by launching a more complete game in the first place.
Looking back at every game we've discussed, a pattern begins to emerge. First, there is pressure, whether it comes from shareholders, publishers, investors, or simply the expectations created by years of marketing. Studios often face immense pressure to release games on a specified date. More often than not, that date seems to land suspiciously close to the holiday season. Second, there is ambition. Developers want to create bigger worlds, more realistic graphics, more complex systems, and more content than ever before. But ambition without enough development time often results in unfinished products. Security Breach tried to become the biggest Five Nights at Freddy's game ever made. No Man's Sky promised an entire universe. Cyberpunk attempted to create one of the most detailed open worlds ever built. In each case, the vision exceeded what could realistically be completed before launch. Finally, there's something unique to modern gaming, the ability to patch games after release. 20 years ago, if a game shipped broken, it stayed broken. Today, developers can release updates, hotfixes, and downloadable content months or even years after launch. While this technology is incredibly useful, it has also created a dangerous mindset. Release it now, fix it later. So how can studios avoid repeating these mistakes? The first solution is simple. Release games when they are ready. Delays are frustrating, but they are temporary. A disastrous launch can damage a game's reputation for years. The second solution is controlling scope. Bigger is not always better. One of the most interesting lessons from Security Breach's ruined DLC was that a smaller, more focused experience ended up feeling more polished and more effective than the massive game that came before it. The third solution is honesty. Marketing should reflect the game that actually exists, not the game the developers hope will exist in the future. But developers are not the only people who influence this cycle. Players do too. Every game discussed in this video sold millions of copies before most people had even played it. Pre-orders and day-one purchases tell publishers that release dates matter more than release quality. If consumers wait for reviews, gameplay footage, and technical analysis before buying, companies have a stronger incentive to launch polished products rather than unfinished ones. At the end of the day, gamers do not expect perfection. Bugs will always exist. Glitches will always slip through testing. What players expect is a game that is finished, functional, and respects the money they spent on it. Because after years of waiting, years of marketing, and years of hype, nobody wants to sit down on launch day only to discover that the real final boss was the game's performance.